Hi third graders, it's Heron from the Westport River Watershed Alliance, and this year we're going to be learning science through studying birds. We have two Commonwealth Corps service members that are going to be helping us out this year.
Hi, I'm Scout. Hi, I'm Clover.
So we'll be teaching you a different topic every month, and by the end I think you'll be ornithologists or bird scientists. So for our introduction to birds, we're going to start off with a lesson on what makes a bird a bird. When scientists are trying to learn about something, they group them by the characteristics that they share with other animals. The characteristics could be traits or the things that they have in common. So scientists made 6 basic groups of animals, starting with the fish, amphibians, reptiles, birds, mammals, and insects. So for example, fish, the things that they have in common is that they're cold-blooded, which means that their body temperature changes with their surroundings. So if the water that they're swimming in gets colder, then their body temperature gets colder. They also have a backbone and scales. So today we'll start off with what makes a bird, all of those characteristics or traits that they have in common that makes them a bird. So we're going to take a close-up look first at some of the characteristics that birds have that have adapted over time that help them to survive in their habitat. The first thing we'll look at are some of the internal features, which are the features that are inside a bird. So we're going to use this plastic model that we have over here to take a look at some of those characteristics. So all birds are vertebrates, which means they have a skeleton on the inside of their body. Unlike some of the other vertebrates, birds' backbones are actually fused, or they're attached together in the lower part of the back. This makes them a little less able to turn and spin, but it makes their bones stronger. Another trait that they have in their bones is that their bones are actually hollow on the inside. This makes them light enough to fly, but they're also really strong, so they can handle the stresses of taking off, flying, and landing. One of the adaptations they have is fusing some of the bones, like we were talking about with the backbone. And because of this, birds have fewer bones than other vertebrates. They also lack teeth or even a real jaw. Instead, they have the beak, which is much more lightweight. Another interesting trait that birds have is in their digestive system, they have a special place called a crop. So when a bird eats something, the crop holds the food before it goes further down the digestive tract. They store food in their crops like a little chicken lunchbox. It moves on to the stomach, gets soaked with digestive juices before finally getting chewed by a special part of their stomach called the gizzard. They also swallow rocks so that there are rocks inside their gizzard that they can use to chew or break up the food. This helps them because they don't have teeth, so they swallow all of their food whole. Birds tend to have larger hearts than mammals relative to their body size and mass. The relatively large hearts of birds are necessary to meet the high demands of flight. A hummingbird, for example, has a much faster heartbeat even than humans. The hummingbird's heart beats about 300 beats per minute. The average human beats about 60 to 80 beats per minute. Another very unique characteristic that birds have that other animals don't is that they have extra pockets in their lungs that are called air sacs. When a bird breathes in, any air that doesn't fit into their lungs goes into their air sacs. When they breathe out, the air from the air sacs travels into the lungs. That way the bird's lungs are always getting new, fresh air, whether they're inhaling or exhaling. So now we're going to take a look at some of the external features of the bird, or the features that we can see on the outside of the bird. We'll start with a bird's beak. We talked about when we were looking at the model of the bird that they don't have any teeth in their beak. So the shape of their beak actually depends a lot on the kinds of food they eat. If this was a bird of prey like a hawk or an osprey, they would have a really down-curved beak so that they can tear apart the food that they eat. For a chicken, they eat mostly insects and seeds and fruits and things, so they have a much smaller and not as much of a curved shape to their beak. another thing to look at is the bird's eyes. Eyes all have rods and cones in them, some receptors that can tell light and color. And depending on what the bird does, they have different amounts of rods and cones. Owls, for example, have a lot of rods because they are looking for food at night, so they can see really well at night. Something like a chicken would have more cones because they're looking for things in the daytime, from berries and insects and things like that. Bird we're going to look at are the bird's ears. Unlike mammals, birds don't have any external parts to their ear, so they're all inside the body. They have little holes that you can see where the sound is going into their ear on the side of their head. Something like an owl, which is really good at hearing, has their ears on two different sides of their head. So they would have one up here on this side, and then on this side of their head it would be down low, so that they can tell where sound is coming from even better than some of the other birds. So the next part we'll take a look at is the bird's wing. They're completely feathered, like this bird's wing right here. She has little coverts on the top that cover and make it aerodynamic, and then she has these big flight feathers down here. If you take a peek underneath the wing, it's pretty bare of feathers, and that's actually how birds cool themselves off. They'll hold up their wings and the bare skin will be exposed to the outside. Another thing that birds have, and again it helps them to fly, is really large muscles. The muscles that they have for the size of their body is actually quite big. So they need those muscles for flying mostly. To get the lift by flapping their wings, they need to have really big muscles in the front to be able to support that. Another characteristic of birds that people think a lot about are the feathers of the birds. So that's another thing that makes them unique and makes them a bird. There's no other animal that has feathers like birds do. They have all kinds of different feathers, from the ones that cover their head to help them keep in their warmth, because they are a warm-blooded creature. So not only do the feathers help with flight, but they also help to sustain their body temperature, so they can keep the same temperature all the time. They've got the flight feathers, which we looked at, tail feathers. Underneath they have the downy feathers that are really meant for keeping them warm, and they're very fluffy and fuzzy. So that's one of the things that makes them unique. Interesting characteristic for birds are their feet. They have scaled feet. If you can see this kind of bird has feathered feet, which is different too for some of the chickens. But they do have scales on their feet. They have the talons on the end, or little claws that are at the end of their feet. And birds have all different shaped feet. Something like a duck that swims all the time has webbed feet. Something like an osprey that catches fish has really big talons to be able to hold on to the fish. So their feet are different for, again, depending on their habitat and how they're best adapted. The last trait we're going to talk about today are the fact that birds all lay eggs. So it's another thing that is common to all birds. They can lay different shaped eggs, different colored eggs. Some of them help them to blend and camouflage in. But it is a common trait to all birds that they do lay eggs. Well, I hope you had a chance to learn a lot about what makes a bird a bird. And then the next time that we'll see you, we will learn some more about the different science of birds. While you're thinking about birds, and over the next few weeks, you can start to look at birds and see what kinds of things you see around where you live. Take a note of the size of the bird, maybe the color of the feathers, and what behavior they're doing.